When I was 16, I decided to drop biology. I said, why bother with a science degree? I would try and make my living writing poetry, so I skipped the chapter on human anatomy. I was always at a loss of comebacks when people got mad at me for practicing something that was so unnatural. To the boys in my grade, kissing other girls was only factual when my moral compass was at the mercy of the contents of a red Solo cup. Not that shut me up. I learned you don't look gay. It's just synonymous for you're only supposed to be pretty in my pornography. This isn't about artistic differences. You don't care about photography. You only ever really did well in phys ed. Which is probably why you bring up that they barely mentioned my sorts of relationships in sex ed, so I guess you assumed I'm just some sort of myth that you had to disprove. My sexuality would only ever be lucid if I spread my legs and begged you to be my enlightening. It is pretty frightening how everything I feel is actually invalid. In math class, you said you'd rather convert me than metric to imperial. You started failing pre-cal, but we're still king of percentages. You loved to talk about girls painting numbers over their heads, dividing their worth and multiplying your ego, and I know you love to rate people. So tell me, on a scale from 1 to 10, how much do I make you uncomfortable? The way I've been challenging your numbers with the numeration in a recent conversation. I asked if the girl you pursued had a chin that jutted out, and if from a side profile she looked like a crescent moon, if she had a hooked nose that hooked you in, if she had raven braids and cat hair all over her grandpa's sweaters. You cut me off, saying that all the girls I ever described sort of sound like witches. You forget that witches are magic, and since you're so childish, maybe I do want someone who would scare you a little. You think bone structure is something to climb on. You only ever want to play connect the dots if it's with freckles, and you get to put your hands on someone. You also think that makeup is lying face paint, and I'm not clowning around when I say I may be a lipstick lesbian, but there is nothing about me that you can just wipe away. You say the only sort of science experience I have happens with experimenting. To you, male desires are explained in test tubes, but girls get confused by perfume bottles. Seduction is the only kind of chemistry you'd ever give me credit for. You ignore that when I dropped biology, I did pretty well in physics class. When we were studying triangles, I was calculating girls' jawlines. I can't remember at which points a dropped pencil accelerates, but I do know the way my pulse does. Whenever a girl's pupil dilates, the velocity at which I become captivated happens during the 0.5 seconds it takes for a girl to laugh through her smile. Don't tell me this is a phase when I am in a constant state of inertia. Albert Einstein once said gravitation is not to be held responsible for people falling in love. So don't act like you're above me. How are you more real than me when girls were notches in your belt and they seeped from the margins into the pages of my physics notes? You say that I need evidence, like all my dalliances are just foolish feminine decadence. You should see the irony in saying that lesbianism is something man-made. You should think twice before telling me that my love is a vice. If you want to say parts of me don't exist when you make fists and I accept everything with open hands, the only things that are real to you are whatever you can take in your teeth. So chew on the fact that you have never felt the way that I do. I memorize Cupid's bows and ankles. When you roll over curves, I get caught on edges. When you wolf whistle, I hear how air catches in her windpipe. When you won't stop spouting your unfiltered thoughts, I am listening to everything that she knows to be true. I am so sorry you love the way that you do, because girls could be replaced with cardboard cutouts but never corrugated, because then they'd have too many layers and you'd have to burn them like all the witches that I've ever loved. Like the witch that I've always been. This conversation is so expired. I'm getting tired of explaining being sapphic, so listen. My love isn't always diplomatic or quixotic. It doesn't need to be photogenic. It exists even when you aren't looking at it. You said you could turn a girl like me straight, but that completely negates that your ideologies are about 4 centuries too late. I was never confused. I never asked you to convince me. If you want to know how I'm doing without you, fine. The only thing I've ever been is happy.